Hello there, my name is Jill Maurer and I am a jewelry designer. Today I'm talking about Georgian jewelry, which spans the period from 1714 to 1837. And it is named for King George I through King George IV, but it also includes the reign of William IV. These are English kings, but the designs were affected by events going on in Europe, particularly in Paris and in different parts of Europe. In looking at estate jewelry, the Georgian period is usually the first that we start with. It's the first that we kind of call a period and talk about. The reason we usually start talking about estate jewelry periods with the Georgian period is that prior to this, all of the jewelry is specifically for royalty. You had to be royalty to wear jewelry by law. At this point you still did too, but people started to thumb their nose at it and wear jewelry. So there wasn't really a big civilian market for jewelry, and there wasn't a lot of jewelry, and most of it is in the possession of different countries as crown jewels. During this time, what were the people looking like? What were they wearing? Picture big wigs. You know, Marie Antoinette, she had her big wig. The different kings had huge wigs. There were even cartoons done mocking their style. So the men had huge wigs on. They had silk clothing that was colorful and tight. They had heels, mostly red heels. They had gems on the buckles of their shoes. We tend to think of jewelry, sometimes people tend to think of jewelry as for women, but in this period, more men than women wore jewelry. Jewelry was really more for men, and the pieces were created for men. But as I always say, jewelry is jewelry. It's not for a man or a woman. But at this time, it's important to know that many more men were wearing jewelry than women. Everything was done by hand, meaning even when you got the gold, you had to hammer it out into sheets by hand. Today, we can order gold in wires, in sheets, in different formats. Not so then. You got a hunk of gold and you started hammering it out. That's how this process started. Around 1750, so during this time, the rolling mill was invented, and so there's a part of this period where they are able to roll out jewelry by machine, which saved a lot of time. But everything is handmade. It usually has etching and carving and even reprise all over it, meaning that every little piece of it has carving and design around it. In the beginning of this period, the style is more Baroque, so everything is very, very symmetrical. It's ornate and very symmetrical. In the later part of this time period, it can become a little more open and less symmetrical, but it is all still done by hand, and there is a lot of etching and handwork on it. Pieces of this time will not be stamped or marked. That we weren't doing that then. Usually the gold was 18 karat or higher, but there shouldn't be any kind of stamp on it. And the gems oftentimes they were rose cut, meaning they're flat on the bottom with a curved top, or just mine cut. They're just kind of cut right there at the mine following the stone. And they're sort of wonky, odd shapes. And during this time, they usually have a foil backing, so a light coating of metal behind them. And what that did is it made the gem appear more bright and colorful by candlelight. Also, up until about 1750, the only gemstone you really see is diamonds. After 1750, you get some more color. Pearl appears, coral, and also shells. In addition to that rose cut, you also do have cabs. So it's, again, flat bottom with a high polish on the top, cabochon stones, and also briolets. And briolets are it's cut all the way around. So if you picture like a chandelier and those crystal pieces hanging, that's a briolet. You wouldn't set it into metal, it just hangs on something. During this time, bracelets were made in pairs. It was the look of the day to wear the same bracelet on both hands. Nowadays, most of those have been split up. You don't often see them together. They were willed to different people and they're split up, but in the time, they would have worn a pair. There were a lot of fancy buckles that went on shoes and different things. One of the recurring motifs is ribbons. There were cameos, and there was mourning jewelry as well. So mourning jewelry, it is about mourning the loss of someone, and oftentimes what you'll see is a very fancy piece of gold with beautiful stone, and then the band, so maybe a bracelet band, is all woven hair. Usually was from a hairbrush during their life. You know, people would sort of save their hair. And some of these are amazing. They have survived, and it is incredible how intricately woven these pieces can be. Usually pieces were made in sets, and you did have convertible jewelry. So you'd have maybe a big necklace and that had a big pendant, but that pendant could be worn as a brooch. And they would break apart a little bit. You would have day and night earrings where you have You could wear the earring alone as a stud or then take a piece and dangle it on there. Because oftentimes, people may just have this one set and they would wear it in different ways. Another interesting motif in this period was en tremblant, and that's French. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but we would call it also trembler jewelry. A trembler is where you have a component that moves. It sort of wiggles. It's on a little spring. So you might have a floral brooch where one or more of the flowers will move, or maybe a flower where the stems have gems and they will move a little bit. And they would wear them either as a brooch, or oftentimes there were a lot of fancy hair pieces. And sometimes we look at them today and go, how would you wear that? I don't even know what to do with my hair. Well, they were putting it in a wig, so it was much easier, but they would have really decorative pieces and then sometimes a little bit of it would tremble. Georgian pieces are difficult to find today. They're getting very old, of course, and so as time goes on, pieces get lost or broken. But they were also, a lot of them were melted down just to make something that was more fashionable for the moment. Which is sad because these pieces are beautiful, they're interesting, and they really speak to the time. So I know this is sort of random specific knowledge, but I do love Georgian jewelry. I love all estate jewelry, and so I love looking at and talking about Georgian jewelry. So let me know in the comments below, do you like the Georgian style, or is there another era that you like better? Please subscribe so we can be sure and see each other again. Bye for now.